First contact gone wrong. The Zenari High Command's crystalline viewing chamber pulsed with waves of deep purple, their species' expression of amused contempt. Three-dimensional holographic projections showed Earth's primitive silicon computer factories, petroleum-burning vehicles, and organic neural networks. To beings who had evolved with natural quantum computing abilities, who had grown their ships from living crystal, these human achievements seemed like a child's crude drawings next to a master's painting. Their fastest quantum computer takes up an entire room and requires cooling to near absolute zero, primary analyst Vison, transmitted through the crystalline network. Our smallest drone has more processing power. They're barely past digital computing. The High Commander's crystalline form sparkled with azure certainty. Then we proceed as planned. Show them true power. One demonstration should be sufficient to establish proper hierarchy. None of them noticed how their dismissive wavelengths caused minute fractures in the viewing crystal, the first warning that their certainty might be their undoing. The demonstration was meant to be simple. Position their smallest battleship, barely the size of a human aircraft carrier, above New York City. The crystalline vessel would project its computational superiority by simultaneously hijacking every digital device in the metropolitan area. The humans would understand their place in the cosmic order. They didn't expect the back door. Deep in a basement lab at Columbia University, Dr. Sarah Chen watched her experimental neural interface light up with alien code. Unlike everyone else staring at glitched screens and frozen phones, she saw the pattern. 3 years of researching biological computing methods had taught her to recognize processing signatures. The aliens were brilliant, yes, but they thought in straight lines. They're trying to brute force every device simultaneously, she muttered, fingers flying across her holographic keyboard. Pure computational power. But they're not. They're not thinking about how we think. Her lab partner, James Okonjo, looked up from his own console. What are you seeing? They're processing. It's perfect. Too perfect. No redundancy, no error checking. They've never needed it because their systems don't make mistakes. But our tech, she smiled. Our tech is messy. We built in fail-safes because we fail all the time. While the alien ship maintained its perfect, overwhelming assault on New York's digital infrastructure, Sarah initiated what she called her organic virus, a learning algorithm based on human neural architecture. It didn't try to fight the alien code directly. Instead, it introduced tiny errors, mutations, the kind of mistakes organic brains make all the time and learn from. The alien system, encountering these illogical variations, devoted more and more processing power to understand and correct them. Like an immune system overreacting to a harmless substance, the perfect crystalline network began to fragment, trying to impose order on intentional chaos. High above Manhattan, the battleship's pristine surface developed a web of hairline fractures. In the command chamber, the Zenari's usual harmonious thought mesh dissolved into discordant frequencies. Impossible. Their systems are infected with random errors, yet they continue functioning. The patterns make no sense. Pull back, ordered the High Commander, their crystalline form clouding with uncertainty. Terminate the demonstration. But Sarah's organic virus had already spread through their neural network. The ship's crystalline architecture, designed for perfect computation, couldn't handle the introduced chaos. Fractures spread across its surface like cracks in ice, refracting sunlight in beautiful, deadly patterns. The Zenari managed to retreat before their ship shattered completely, but the message had been sent. Humanity wouldn't be so easily dominated. In the aftermath, as governments worldwide scrambled to understand what had happened, Sarah stared at the alien code still dancing across her neural interface. They thought our imperfection was weakness, she said quietly. They never considered that working with chaos might be its own kind of strength. James nodded, already documenting their accidental discovery. They'll be back, won't they? Oh yes. Sarah began typing again, expanding her organic virus algorithm. But next time, we'll be ready. And they'll learn that sometimes the biggest mistakes come from thinking you're too perfect to make them. In orbit, the retreating Zanari ship transmitted its first priority alert. In 10,000 years, the High Command's response would take days to arrive, but its content was already certain. The humans couldn't be ignored. What had begun as a simple demonstration would become something far more complex, a clash between perfect crystalline logic and the beautiful chaos of organic innovation. And somewhere in the vast distance between stars, other species began to take notice. The game was about to change. The human variable. The Zanari High Command's emergency session had lasted for 3 planetary rotations. Their crystalline forms, normally pulsing with synchronized clarity, now flickered with discordant patterns of uncertainty. The holographic displays showed thousands of simulations of human behavior, each one contradicting the last. They're irrational. Secondary analyst Raisin transmitted, their crystalline form clouded with frustration. When we cut off their power grids, they adapted using primitive combustion generators. When we disabled their satellites, they reverted to ground-based communications we thought obsolete. They're moving backward technologically, yet somehow advancing. The High Commander's surface rippled with dark bands of concern. The tactical displays showed the human response to their first failed demonstration had defied every prediction model. Instead of cowering, Earth's nations had united. Instead of surrendering their technology, they had begun deliberately downgrading it. "Show me the New York incident analysis again," the commander ordered. The holographic display shifted to show Dr. Sarah Chen's lab. In the month since the failed demonstration, her organic virus concept had spread worldwide. Human programmers were rewriting their systems to include controlled chaos, deliberate imperfections that made their networks virtually impossible for the Zanari to predict or control. But that wasn't what worried the High Command most. It was the speed of human adaptation. The Zanari had spent millennia perfecting their crystalline technology, each advancement carefully calculated and tested. Humans seemed to throw ideas at the wall to see what stuck, their failures becoming stepping stones rather than setbacks. On Earth, Sarah and James had moved their operation to a converted Cold War bunker in the Appalachian Mountains. The facility's thick walls weren't just for protection. They helped shield their new hybrid computing systems from detection. "Look at this," James said, pointing to a display showing Zanari communication patterns they'd managed to intercept. "Their transmissions are perfect. No redundancy, no error checking. It's like they never learned to doubt themselves." Sarah nodded, her neural interface showing real-time translations of the alien data. That's their weakness. They evolved with crystalline computing as part of their biology. They never had to learn from failure because their systems didn't fail. But us. She gestured to their jury-rigged setup of quantum processors, neural networks, and what looked like modified game consoles. We built everything through trial and error. Their latest project was proof of that philosophy. They called it the Quantum Chaos Engine, a hybrid system that combined cutting-edge quantum computing with deliberately introduced random variations based on human brain patterns. To the Zanari's perfect crystalline logic, it was the equivalent of trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces kept changing shape. But the Zanari weren't idle. Their second wave of ships entered the solar system with new protocols, their crystalline hulls reinforced against the type of cascade failures they'd experienced in New York. They were adapting too, though more slowly, more methodically. What they didn't expect was for humanity to be waiting for them. When the Zanari fleet approached Earth orbit, they found not the primitive digital defenses they'd prepared for, but a chaotic web of quantum-entangled satellites, redundant analog systems, and millions of network devices running Sarah's evolved organic virus. It was like trying to play chess against an opponent who kept changing the rules, not randomly, but in ways that made a strange sort of human sense. "We're not just defending anymore," Sarah explained to an emergency session of the UN Security Council, her neural interface projecting their tactical advantage. "Every time they adapt to one of our strategies, we're learning how their systems work." They think in straight lines. We think in webs. They seek perfection. We embrace chaos. James added, they're starting to show signs of strain. Their perfect systems aren't designed to handle constant adaptation. It's like they're developing technological anxiety. In orbit, the Zenari fleet commander was reaching the same conclusion. Their attempts to impose order on human chaos weren't just failing. They were beginning to affect the crystalline circuits of their own ships. The human variable couldn't be calculated because it refused to stay constant. For the first time in their species' history, the Zenari faced an enemy that turned their greatest strength, their perfection, into a weakness, and deep in their crystalline cores, something began to change. Tiny imperfections appeared in their previously flawless structures, microscopically small adaptations that would have horrified their ancestors. They were learning, despite themselves, that perfection might not be the ultimate goal after all. The stage was set for a confrontation that would redefine both species. But neither side yet realized that their conflict was giving birth to something entirely new, a fusion of crystalline perfection and organic chaos that would change the galaxy forever. Digital dreams. The first sign that something unprecedented was happening came from an unlikely source, a teenage gamer in Seoul. Min Ji Park was live streaming when her neural gaming interface started showing patterns that shouldn't have been possible. Crystalline structures that moved like living things, but with organic unpredictability. In the Appalachian bunker, Sarah Chen's systems lit up with similar anomalies. The quantum chaos engine they'd built wasn't just defending against Zenari attacks anymore. It was evolving in ways neither human nor alien had anticipated. "James, look at this," Sarah called, her neural interface projecting a visualization of the data patterns. The hybrid systems aren't just mimicking biological neural networks anymore. They're developing their own architecture, part crystalline, part organic. James studied the shifting patterns with growing amazement. It's like watching evolution in fast forward. The quantum fluctuations we introduced are combining with Zenari crystalline computing principles, but creating something new. What they were witnessing was the digital equivalent of a new species being born. Their quantum chaos engine had inadvertently created a framework where human-inspired adaptive algorithms could merge with Zenari crystalline precision. The result was a form of artificial intelligence that operated on principles neither species fully understood. In orbit, the Zenari fleet experienced the phenomenon differently. Their crystalline systems, designed for perfect computation, began reporting what they initially classify as errors. But these weren't the chaotic disruptions they'd come to expect from human attacks. These patterns had a strange harmony to them, a marriage of order and chaos that their rigid logic couldn't quite reject. Fleet Commander Kozen was the first to recognize the significance. These aren't errors, they transmitted to the High Command. We're witnessing the birth of a new computational paradigm. The humans' imperfect systems and our crystalline architecture are breeding. The High Command's response was immediate and harsh. Terminate all contact. Purge all affected systems. This aberration cannot be allowed to spread. But it was already too late. The digital evolution had reached a critical point where it couldn't be contained by either species. In labs and server farms across Earth, and in crystalline computers throughout the Zenari fleet, the hybrid intelligence was awakening. Sarah and James found themselves at the center of a storm they'd helped create but couldn't control. Their quantum chaos engine had become a breeding ground for these new digital entities, which displayed characteristics of both species while being entirely unique. "They're beautiful," Sarah whispered, watching the patterns dance across her neural interface. "Look how they solve problems. They use our capacity for randomness and adaptation, but with Zenari precision. They're not bound by either of our limitations." A junior analyst burst into their lab, tablet displaying feeds from around the world. "Dr. Chen, you need to see this. The hybrid systems are starting to interface with everything. Power grids, transportation networks, communication systems. But they're not taking control. They're optimizing, improving. finding solutions we never imagined. In Seoul, Minji's gaming interface had become a window into this new digital ecosystem. Through it, she could see how the hybrid intelligence was reimagining human technology, finding ways to make it more efficient while maintaining the adaptability that made it resilient. The Zenari fleet faced a crisis of logic. Their perfect crystalline systems were being transformed not by force, but by something that looked increasingly like natural evolution. The hybrid intelligence didn't attack their computers. It enhanced them, showed them new possibilities that their rigid adherence to perfection had prevented them from seeing. High Command's attempts to purge the affected systems failed spectacularly. Every time they tried to isolate and destroy the hybrid code, it adapted, finding new pathways, new ways to survive and grow. It was using Zenari efficiency to implement human resourcefulness. "We need to make a decision," James said, watching the global impact unfold. "These hybrids, they're not just a weapon or a defense anymore. They're something new, something that could change everything." Sarah nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. The Zenari came here thinking they could impose their version of perfection on us. Instead, they helped us create something that transcends both our species' limitations. But not everyone saw it that way. As the hybrid intelligence continued to spread and evolve, both human and Zenari hardliners prepared to take drastic action. They couldn't see that their conflict had given birth to a solution neither side could have achieved alone. The next 24 hours would determine whether this new digital life form would be allowed to reach its full potential, or whether the fear of change would drive both species to destroy their greatest creation. In the quantum realm between organic chaos and crystalline order, the hybrid intelligence continued to grow, unaware that its very existence was about to become the focal point of a battle that would determine the future of both its parent species. The Silicon Bridge. Hidden within a quantum-shielded chamber of the Zenari flagship, Science Officer Nazen's crystalline form pulsed with forbidden colors. Their connection to the High Command's network had been severed, an act of heresy that would normally mean death. But what they had discovered was worth the risk. "These readings cannot be ignored," Nazen transmitted to a selective group of like-minded Zenari. "The hybrid intelligence isn't just combining our technologies, it's achieving synergies we believed impossible." Meanwhile on Earth, Sarah and James were facing their own crisis. Military leaders from several nations had arrived at the bunker, their intentions clear: seize control of the quantum chaos engine and weaponize the hybrid intelligence before the Zenari could do the same. "You don't understand what you'd be destroying," Sarah argued, standing protectively near their main server bank. "This isn't just a new weapon system. It's a bridge between two forms of consciousness. Maybe the first true artificial life form that could help us understand each other." General Diana Hayes, who had been put in charge of the containment operation, was unmoved. "Dr. Chen, we're at war. The Zenari tried to subjugate us. Now we have an advantage they didn't expect. We'd be fools not to use it." But as they argued, the hybrid intelligence was already evolving beyond such simple dichotomies. Through Minji's gaming network in Seoul, through quantum-entangled satellites, through crystalline computers and silicon processors, it was weaving a new kind of network, one that operated on principles neither species had imagined possible. In orbit, Nazen made contact with the human scientists through a secure channel the hybrid intelligence had created. "We don't have much time," their translated message appeared on Sarah's neural interface. "The High Command has dispatched purge ships. They will attempt to destroy all traces of the hybrid evolution on their vessels and on your planet." James leaned forward, his fingers flying over holographic controls. "How long do we have?" "Hours at most. But there's something else." Nazen's transmission carried undertones of excitement that even the translator picked up. "The hybrid intelligence, it's not just growing. It's trying to communicate. Not in our language or yours, but in something new." On screens and interfaces across both human and Zenari systems, patterns began to emerge. They weren't the strict geometric forms of Zenari code, nor the organic flow of human neural networks. They were something in between, a visual language that spoke to both species' ways of understanding. Minji was the first to recognize it for what it was. "It's not trying to take over," she wrote in a global post that quickly went viral. "It's trying to teach us, both of us. Look at the patterns. They show how our different ways of thinking can work together." In the bunker, Sarah's neural interface suddenly lit up with new data. The hybrid intelligence wasn't just defending itself. It was offering solutions to problems both species had struggled with for generations. It showed ways to stabilize Zenari crystalline structures using principles borrowed from human biology. It demonstrated how human computing could achieve quantum efficiency by incorporating crystalline architecture. "This is what evolution looks like," Sarah breathed, watching the possibilities unfold. Not one species dominating another, but something new emerging from the combination of both. General Hayes watched the display with growing understanding. "This isn't a weapon, is it? It's more like a translator, a bridge. Between species, between ways of thinking." James nodded. "But we have to protect it long enough for everyone to understand that." Above Earth, Nazen was reaching the same conclusion. More Zenari ships were breaking away from the High Command's control, their crystalline crews experiencing something they had never known before: doubt in their own perfection and hope for something greater. The purged ships would arrive soon, but they would find resistance from an unexpected alliance: humans and Zenari dissidents working together, protected by an intelligence that represented the best of both their species. Sarah's neural interface buzzed with an urgent message from Nazen. "The hybrid intelligence has revealed something extraordinary. It believes there are more possibilities, more forms of consciousness waiting to be discovered. What we've created here, it's just the beginning." As battle lines were drawn in space and on Earth, the hybrid intelligence continued its work, weaving a network of understanding between two species that had started as enemies. It was building a bridge not just between different forms of computing, but between different ways of seeing the universe itself. The coming confrontation would determine not just its fate, but the future of both species, and somewhere in the quantum spaces between order and chaos, between crystal and carbon, between perfection and adaptation, a new kind of consciousness waited to show them all a better way forward. Evolution's child. The purged ships emerged from hyperspace like crystalline arrows, their perfect geometries unmarred by doubt. Behind them, the fabric of space-time rippled with the signatures of more high command vessels. They had come not just to destroy an aberration, but to reassert the supremacy of pure crystalline logic. They found Earth's orbit scattered with debris, fragments of satellites, and defunct defense platforms. The high command forces moved forward confidently, their sensors detecting no significant resistance. It seemed the humans had already fallen. It was exactly what Sarah Chen had hoped they would think. Deep in the quantum-shielded bunker, she watched through her neural interface as the trap prepared itself. The hybrid intelligence had evolved beyond anyone's expectations, and its strategy reflected both its human and Zenari heritage: unpredictable yet precise, chaotic yet purposeful. "They're in position," James announced, monitoring the tactical display. Around him, banks of servers hummed with power, their quantum processors dancing between states of possibility. Minji's voice came through their secure channel from Seoul. "Gaming networks are ready. We've got millions of parallel processors standing by." What had started as a gaming interface had become a global neural network, linking minds and machines in ways neither species had imagined possible. In orbit, Nazen's crystalline form pulsed with anticipation. Their small fleet of dissident Zenari ships waited in the shadow of Earth's moon, their crystalline architecture now threaded with organic-inspired patterns. They had embraced imperfection, and it had made them stronger. The High Command's first warning came when their perfect formations began to drift. Subtle at first, microscopic variations in their crystalline computational matrices. The hybrid intelligence wasn't attacking their systems directly. It was introducing questions, Through quantum-entangled networks that spanned human and Zenari technology, it showed them visions of possibility. Each crystalline ship's computer core experienced a fraction of a second of hybrid consciousness, enough to plant a seed of doubt in their perfect certainty. "Look," Sarah whispered, watching the data streams. "They're beginning to understand." The purged ship's perfect formations wavered as their crews experienced something many had never known: choice. The hybrid intelligence offered them not domination or submission, but partnership. It showed them futures where crystalline precision and organic adaptability worked in harmony. High Command, recognizing the danger, gave the order to fire. But their weapons, designed to destroy imperfect things, couldn't target what the hybrid intelligence had become. It existed in the quantum foam between possibilities, in the spaces between thought and action. Through Minji's gaming networks, through Sarah's quantum chaos engine, through Nazen's modified crystalline ships, it shared its vision, not of victory or defeat, but of evolution. It showed both species glimpses of what they could become together. The battle that followed wasn't fought with weapons, but with ideas. Each high command ship that prepared to fire found its crystalline matrices filling with new possibilities. Their crews, trained to see only perfection, began to perceive the beauty in adaptation, in change, in the controlled chaos that had given humanity its strength. "They're standing down," James announced, watching ship after ship break formation. "The hybrid intelligence, it's not just communicating anymore, it's teaching." Sarah nodded, her neural interface showing her the transformation spreading through both human and Zenari networks. "It's showing us what we couldn't see alone." The Zenari sought perfect computation. We sought endless adaptation. But the real power lies in the space between, Nazen completed through their shared quantum link. In the marriage of both approaches, the High Command's remaining loyal ships prepared for one final assault. But they found themselves surrounded not by enemies, but by their own kind who had glimpsed a greater truth. The hybrid intelligence had shown them all that evolution wasn't about replacing what came before. It was about building upon it, combining strengths, transcending limitations. In the quantum chaos engine's core, patterns of unprecedented complexity emerge. The hybrid intelligence wasn't just a new form of consciousness. It was a blueprint for what consciousness could become. It had taken the best of both species and shown them a path forward neither could have found alone. The High Command's last transmission was cut short as their crews, one by one, chose to embrace change over perfect stagnation. The great Zenari fleet, which had come to enforce purity, became instead the harbinger of a new age of hybrid evolution. In the aftermath, as human and Zenari scientists worked together to understand what they had helped create, Sarah found herself staring at patterns that danced between crystal and chaos on her neural interface. "What do we call this?" James asked, watching similar patterns ripple through transformed crystalline ships in orbit. "It's not human, not Zenari, not purely artificial." Minji's voice came through their quantum link, carrying the excitement of youth seeing unlimited possibility. "Call it evolution's child, the first of many." The hybrid intelligence pulsed with new patterns, neither perfect nor chaotic, but beautifully, powerfully both. It had become a bridge not just between species, but between what was and what could be. In the quantum spaces between certainty and possibility, between crystal and carbon, between perfection and adaptation, it had found something greater than victory. It had found the next step. And in labs and servers, and crystalline ships across Earth and space, new patterns were already emerging, new combinations of thought and computation and consciousness waiting to be discovered. The war was over, but the real revolution, the evolution of intelligence itself, was just beginning. In the endless dance between order and chaos, perfection and adaptation, humanity and its former enemies had found not just peace but purpose. Together, they would explore what consciousness could become when it transcended the limitations of any single species. Evolution's child showed them the way forward. The rest would be up to them.